I had a lot of respect for my father and the things that he taught me about the traditional ways of our people. He was an initiated yebiche dancer. When he had gotten very elderly, he was determined for himself already that he was not going to be around for very much longer. He said, "Take me out to the corral and saddle one of my horses for me just one more time." There are so many people that think that all Native people mistreat their horses. If you are willing to mistreat your animals, you might mistreat the people around you. In my father's lifetime, he grew up and went to Fort Apache boarding school and went to the 8th grade. And he also enlisted in the Marine Corps during World War II. He was invited to participate in the Code Talker program as well. Some of the things that I learned from him when I traveled with my father. I remembered one time when I was on a road trip with him, I asked him, I said, "Dad, do you remember when you whipped me one time?" And that was because I was thinking, only one time has he ever taken a switch to me. And he said, he kind of put his head down and said, "Yes, I remember." And I said, "Do you remember why you did that?" And he says, "Yes, I remember." He said, "You were being very disrespectful to your mom." He says, "That's why I did it." I had a lot of respect for my father and the things that he taught me about the traditional ways of our people. And I would hear him sing his ceremonial songs that he knew, talk about the ceremonial prayers and about conducting the various ceremonies. He was an initiated yebiche dancer, and so I received a lot of information about the yebiche dance and how they're performed and what is done and so on. So a lot of the understanding of the some of the ceremonies and that are done during the wintertime, I learned from my father, and the other ceremonies and that as well. And he was also a person that was called often by various medicine men to go and find certain herbs and plants and that were used in ceremonies and that when healing ceremonies were done. And he understood the idea that there were male and female plants and exactly what part of the herb to be collected for what particular ceremonies and so on. And so he was very knowledgeable about these things. I never did really gain his full understanding of so many things that he wanted to share with me. I remember his love for horses, his great appreciation of good horses. He had special horses and special names for them, and he would talk to them just like he was talking to people. That was always interesting to me. If he would turn horses loose and he wanted them to come to him, he would whistle and he would tell them, "Hakko, hakko," which means "come here, come here," and they would trot to him. The other thing I noticed about my father was he had absolute perfect balance on a horseback, and I've ridden with him bareback with no saddle. We'd go tearing through among trees and jumping over bushes and things, but I always rode with a saddle. But I watched him when he would be riding bareback. He never slipped off of a horse and never fell. I've never seen him fall off of a horse. He was a tracker. People from all areas of the reservation would always contact him if they lost heads of horses or cattle or even some sheep and goats and so on. And one day we came to a place as we were tracking these animals to a windmill. A windmill had a trough and where all different types of animals could come and drink. And I thought, well, there's hundreds and maybe even thousands of tracks here, I guess this is going to be the end of our search. But no, he rode around. He rode around several times, and all of a sudden he says, "They went this way." And I was so amazed. I said, "Dad, how can you tell?" He said, "Well," he pointed out the way the hoofs look on the animal. He says, "This one here is the one that I've been looking at." And he says, "And that one went this way with the other herd." So we followed it, and sure enough, after a few more hours, we located the cattle. But he was a tracker, a fantastic tracker. When he had gotten very elderly, he was determined for himself already that he was not going to be around for very much longer. And so we had him at home, and my sisters and brothers were with him. But they tell me that the day before he passed on, the night before he passed on, that he says, "Take me out to the corral and saddle one of my horses for me He says, I don't want to ride. He says, I just want to sit on it just one more time. And so they saddled the horse out in the corral. He went out, put on his best clothing, and they helped him get into the saddle. And he sat there for a period of time. And then he got off the horse, and he put his neck around the horse and rubbed its muzzle and scratched its ear and rubbed its neck and talked to the horse. What he said, I never heard. That night, then he passed on. But that was my dad, a very good man, very humble man, very prayerful man. He always told me, he said, I made this mistake. He says, don't you make the same mistake. And those were some of the ways that he would instruct me and teach me. I say these things about my father because some people say, how did Navajo people treat their horses and their animal? From what I've learned from my father, I treat my animals the very best I can. You treat your animals, your cats, your dogs, your horses, and whatever animal you have. Try to be aware of them and do the things that shows that you care. I make these comments because there are so many people that think that all Native people mistreat their horses, mistreat their animals. If you are willing to mistreat your animals, you might mistreat the people around you, your family, and your loved ones, and your acquaintances and the people of the world. And so it's very important to understand to treat your animals, to treat your horses and your cattle, your sheep, your goats kindly and with respect. The story among our people is that we have always had the animal known as a horse. Thing is what we call it. And the word thing is actually the way that the horses call out. Thing. And that's the way that they are named. Thing. And so at one time we are told that the Dene had horses way back in the past sometime. And then for some reason they all died off and were no more among our people. And so when the Spaniards came and they brought the horses with them, our people were already familiar with the animals. Thing. And so it was that they captured horses and it became again the mode of travel. So horses are something that the Dene have always had, they say, but it was just brought back to the Dene when the Europeans arrived. And those are the things that we are told.